Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. Purdue kicked off the 2024 season with a cruise control victory, taking down Indiana State 49-0 on Saturday. I'll look back on the game with a breakdown and some takeaways from the things that stood out the most from Purdue's season opening win. There's nothing better than finally reviewing a football game for the first time since November. Let's do it. If you don't already, be sure to follow the show on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond. There is lots to talk about. It was a blast finally having a game to live tweet about, interacting with you all there. Be sure to follow along and send over questions for the show there on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond, or email me, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. And if you're not already subscribed, be sure to do so that you don't miss a thing throughout this season. Purdue 49, Indiana State nothing. Purdue opens up the season with a thorough victory. Everything you could have wanted to see from Purdue. It was a really nice performance. I will preface everything by saying that I don't think we can draw massive conclusions about this Purdue team off this game. Indiana State is not good. Indiana State also didn't seem like it really wanted to compete in this game, which is fine. Indiana State was overmatched, as we've discussed in the previews for this. Not a good team for the FCS level. So when you put them up against a Big Ten team, it's like putting Carmel up against a little 1A school from rural southern Indiana. It's not fair. It's not a fair fight. Indiana State came out and ran the ball 40 times, 10 pass attempts in comparison. When you're running the ball on 80% of your plays in a game when you're a 5-touchdown underdog, the Indiana State was pretty clearly trying to get this thing over with as soon as possible, get that $500,000 check for playing the game, and get on the bus and get back to Terre Haute as soon as possible. And hey, so be it. I can't blame them. No matter what Indiana State did, the outcome of this game wasn't going to change. The next 11 opponents that Purdue will face are all substantially better than this. And I'm not high on some of Purdue's opponents this season, but this is a really bad FCS team playing against a Big Ten opponent. With that being said, as we get into this thing, don't apologize for dominating. Purdue absolutely took care of business against an overmatched opponent, and that's what you need to do. Purdue scored touchdowns on 5 of the 7 drives with Hudson Card in the game. It would have been 6 out of 7 if there wasn't the fumble by Drew Bibber, pretty deep into Indiana State territory. That drive would have been a touchdown. And then the other one was just hijacked by penalties. Purdue committed like 3 or 4 penalties on the offensive line on the same drive, which forced Purdue to punt for just 1 of 2 times on the day, I believe. Past that, it was a domination. Purdue 3 punts on the day. My apologies. 8.8 yards per play. That is moving the ball with ease. It's kind of tough to do that against air to some degree. And then on the flip side, Purdue allows 2.9 yards per play for Indiana State. Just a terrible number for Indiana State's offense, but Purdue did what it needed to do. Getting into some of the more nitty-gritty, Hudson Card was terrific. 24 for 25, 273 yards, 4 touchdowns. I believe the stat is that he tied the FBS completion percentage record, 96%. I assume there's a minimum number of attempts he had to make to qualify for that. But nonetheless, very impressive performance. He looked very comfortable back there. He made some nice throws on the move. There was a play early on where he's rolling out to his left and makes a really nice throw to Max Clare, who is streaking across the field right to left towards the east sideline and makes a catch going out of bounds. That play stood out. And there were several. He made some nice deep balls, had a nice one to Leland Smith for a touchdown, had a couple other nice ones that were completed, had a couple deep balls that were completed but called back due to penalty. And he had, the one incompletion was a deep shot down the middle to Jamal Edrin. I don't know what happened there. From my view in the press box, I didn't have a great sense of how far that throw was off by. Couldn't tell if Edrin lost it in the sun or if it was just off a little bit, but nonetheless, he was really good. And if you look at Hudson Card's last 3 games he's played for Purdue, he was great against Minnesota. He did not play against Northwestern. He was great against Indiana, and he was great against Indiana State yesterday. So that's 3 straight really good games, and no, those weren't great opponents. Minnesota's not doing great as a program. Indiana was kind of a mess at the end of last year. Indiana State's very overmatched, but it looks like he's taking a step forward and doing some good things here, and that's what you want to see. That's what you really want to see. Purdue needs him to reach his potential, to have a really good year if Purdue wants to get to that 6-win mark and play for a bowl game. Purdue's got to have it. And that's a good start. That's a really good start. I thought the receiving core, just from a sheer physical standpoint, looks more impressive than it has in recent memory. You've got some pretty good-sized dudes out there. Edrin's a pretty big guy who moved well on those screen passes early on. Jerron Tibbs is a rangy target. He's tall, he's long, had a nice touchdown catch. The one drive where Leland Smith had a couple of passes, he's a big dude who looked good. Denylon Morissette had a couple of nice grabs. The late hit wasn't ideal, but he had an all right performance. You add some of the tight ends into that equation, and look, this looks like a nice group of pass catchers. You can sell me pretty easily that this is an improved group of pass catchers than what Purdue had last season. Max Clare picked up right where he left off. He was really good for Purdue last year before he got hurt, and he was great yesterday in the win over Indiana State. He led Purdue in receiving, 5 catches for 71 yards and a touchdown. And honestly, it felt like he had more than 5 catches. It felt like he was everywhere. He had one deep catch that was called back by a penalty. Really good from him. And he's a really, really encouraging player. He's a good athlete. He is a very classic air raid scheme tight end. Really good stuff from him. Definitely the most we've ever seen of Drew Bibber. He played a pretty good amount for Purdue. A lot of injuries over the years for him. He's never really been all that healthy. He looks to be healthy now, and he had a mixed bag of a game. 3 catches for 21 yards. Purdue got him active early, but he did have a drop late in the game from Ryan Brown, and he had that fumble early on. When you look at that tight end room, he's slotted in above George Burhan. Burhan missed a lot of fall camp with an injury. Did play late in the game. He was dressed out and saw some action. Very interested to see the depth chart as Burhan gets healthier. All in all, the pass game looked really good. When Ryan Brown came in, it was fine. He missed a couple of short passes that you didn't really want to see, but Purdue had 12 players catch a pass, 335 passing yards on the day. About as good as it gets. You got to be, if you're a Purdue fan, I think you walk away pretty encouraged about the pass game. And then running the ball, 3 running backs scored touchdowns, and Devin Mockabee wasn't one of them. And Mockabee still had a nice game. So you like that. Mockabee, 8 yards a carry, 11 touches for 89 yards. Reggie Love III looks like a nice add, 38 yards on 7 carries. It's really hard as you get into some of the stats from a game like this because it was just so one-sided. Purdue averages 8 yards a carry. I mean, I don't think we're going to see that a ton this year, but the running back room looked good. You had Elijah Jackson, the walk-on, showing a little bit of speed. He had a nice kick return, and then he took 169 yards to the house at running back. Maybe Purdue has a little more depth there. Jaheim Merriweather scored in his Purdue debut as well, the true freshman from Tennessee. As a whole, I think you got to be pleased with the offense. To me, it did look like a year one to year two progress from a scheme perspective. It looked more like what you see from some of these air raid tree schemes. You had some quick throws early on, a couple of screens to Edrin, a couple of quick dump offs to the tight ends after play action, a couple of quick hitters across the middle. And that opened up your deep shots. That opened up your run game. That's what the air raid is kind of supposed to do, is you get the defense moving around, you get them out of the middle of the field, and that's when you can take your deep shots across the middle. That's when you can run the ball up the middle effectively. It looked like progress. Again, we're going to find out a lot more when Purdue starts playing real competition, but a nice start for this offense. On the defensive side of the ball, I don't know how you take much away from this game. I really don't. And that's, the defense did its job. It shut down Indiana State, less than 3 yards per play. That's stellar. But it became apparent very early that Indiana State wasn't going to be trying to throw the ball downfield. So Purdue could really sell out to stop the run, to stop the short passing game, which is great. It did. But it's really hard to make opinions here. I mean, completely overwhelmed at the point of attack. Purdue's defensive line is a spot where I have questions about with this team, but it dominated Indiana State. It was in the backfield right away. All of Indiana State's rushing success was lateral stuff. They did not get much going trying to run up the middle on Purdue. You saw Jeffrey Emba, you saw Cole Brevard, you saw DeMar J. Lewis. A number of guys. Kydron Jenkins coming down the middle, just shutting things down. So, I don't know. You saw what you wanted to see, no doubt. But you saw nothing from Purdue defending the pass. 5 of 10 for 50 yards for Indiana State. Woo. Teron Grant had a nice pass breakup. Botros Alessandro had a nice pass breakup. But there wasn't much to see. Dylan Thieneman started the game playing 25 yards off the line. That changed pretty quickly. He was coming up quite a bit. He was playing closer to Antonio Stevens for a lot of the game, because there was just no conceivable way Indiana State was going to throw downfield. I think Elijah Owens is a little more of a runner, because he did do some all right things running the ball for Indiana State. He was Indiana State's leading rusher on the day. Had a nice 20-yard one he ripped off. But, as a whole, I don't... Will Helt's athleticism stood out. That's something that certainly presented itself when he went untouched into the backfield for a sack. He is not a big physical edge rusher. He's not like Nick Scorton or Ryan Kerrigan, to use Purdue examples of the past, where they're just going to maul you out there. But he's a really good athlete and can get around guys. I'm interested to see him against some of the better offensive linemen that he'll face this year, to see if that athleticism still really stands out. And that's how I am with the whole defensive front. I can't make judgments on this before I see them against a much more competitive offensive line. It felt like Jeffrey Emba was more active than we saw last season. That's an encouraging sign. Transfer from Auburn. DeMar J. Lewis was back out there. Kind of a feel-good story. He missed all of 2022 with an injury in fall camp, and then he barely played last year. Still coming back from injuries. He had a nice little debut in 21 when he transferred in from Indiana. very little action the last 2 years. Good to see him on the field. He did go down, but he came back into the game. He got the start. Joe Anderson didn't play. That's one thing to note. This defense, you didn't have Joe Anderson. You didn't have Nyland Green at corner. Nyland Green, Yanni Karlaftis couldn't play the first half. So it's really hard to make judgments. An audience question I got that I'll slot in here is, what's your view on the move of Kydron Jenkins from edge rusher to linebacker? Will speed be a challenge against better competition? Certainly it's possible. My question to this would be, how much of a speed and agility difference is there between Jenkins and Yanni Karlaftis? Because those are your only two guys with experience at inside backer. You have Winston Berglund, you have Owen Davis as redshirt freshmen, but this is not a position where Purdue is flush with bodies, and it's not a position where Purdue is really emphasizing. And that's important to note. I don't think in a transfer portal world, you're going to be able to have the depth that you want at all 11 spots on the field. You do kind of have to prioritize your needs. I don't think linebacker is a priority for this defensive scheme. I think you'll probably see a mix of rush ends who aren't big enough or physical enough get shipped to middle linebacker, or safeties who might not be fast enough get moved to inside linebacker. And that's okay. I don't think that's a huge deal. I don't think it's a perfect fit, Jenkins at inside linebacker, but Purdue is committed to really helping out its players, and this is a move to help Jenkins get to the next level. You need, in this scheme, the defensive line to be disruptive, because you don't want, that is kind of an exposure, is guys going side to side on you. But if the defensive line's disruptive and you're getting a hand on the guy right away, it's tough for him to really make a play outside. So that's why I want to see a lot more of this defensive line. To the point on Jenkins, though, we're going to find out next week, or against Notre Dame. Notre Dame's going to run a lot of side-to-side stuff. Notre Dame's going to run Riley Leonard a ton. You saw it last night against Texas A&M. That's what they're going to try to do. And Purdue's going to have to be able to get some pressure, get a push at the line, and then, go side to side and make tackles. Notre Dame's going to do that all day. You're going to see another run-heavy approach from Notre Dame, I think. The bigger question to me in terms of this move is what the pass rush can accomplish without him. We didn't really see that answered. Will Helt had a couple of sacks, but I want to see it against some of these legit teams. If Purdue's pass rush is still effective, then this is probably a good move. If it's not, then I think you start to ask questions about allocative efficiency to get all economical here. Is this the best possible defense you can put out there? Big positive is that Purdue seemed to get through this game unscathed from an injury perspective. DeMar J. Lewis, as I said, went down. He came back in and finished the game. In his post-game presser, Ryan Walters seemed to indicate that all was good on an injury perspective. A few normal football bruises and bumps, but nothing serious. Purdue kind of sat out three starters in this game, and Nyland Green, C.J. Smith, and Corey Stewart. I don't know, if this was Notre Dame, how many of those guys would have played? I don't know. Maybe all three of them, maybe none of them. I think the goal here is to get all three of them back for Notre Dame. So if that's the case, if all three of them can get back for Notre Dame, you're looking at your best 22 on the field from what we know right now. And that's big. The only real downside of Saturday's game was the penalties. A little disappointing from the offensive line in that front. You had a holding on Josh Sales, who started at left tackle with Corey Stewart out. You had a holding on Bekine Coley. He got some action at the tackle, kind of swinging left to right. False start on DJ Wingfield. False start on Marcus Bowe, who was really good. 2 holdings late in the game on Luke Griffin. I don't know how much he's a part of the plans on the offensive line, but that's got to be cleaned up. Purdue had, where are penalties here? I think Purdue had 11 penalties on the day. 11 penalties for 110 yards. That's terrible. You can't do that against a real opponent. The wiggle room is not there. You have a late hit on denial on Morissette. It's not usually a good sign when a wide receiver is getting tagged with a late hit when his team is on offense. That's a problem. I had a question from the audience about undisciplined errors and whether it'll be a big issue again this year and whether Walters being more of a player's coach factors into it. And I don't think that's fair to say. That feels like an assumption that I don't think can be backed with anything at this point. Week 1 does have this. You saw a lot of dumb penalties across the country in week 1. You do every year. Teams are going to settle into things. I want to see how things look in 2 weeks. But Purdue can't be penalized this much. You're going to have physical mistakes. You're going to have holding calls. You're going to have pass interference calls. That stuff you can live with. It's the false starts. It's the late hit. What else was there? There were 11 of them, which is just far too many. It is a delay of game at one point. It's ineligible receiver downfield. That kind of happens sometimes. But there was a really questionable roughing the passer call on Sheeta Soleil. I didn't love that. But in general, you've got to clean that up. Some serious credit to Purdue fans. 59,000 tickets sold for this game is a really impressive number. And Ryan Walters went out of his way to point this out at the end of his press conference. It's pretty rare that you see a team fresh off a 4-8 season come in, host an FCS team, a hot day in the mid-80s temperature-wise, and you almost sell it out. And I know, some folks get really into Labor Day weekend stuff. For me, Labor Day weekend is just the first weekend of college football, so I don't schedule things, but I know some folks, like to travel, go out of town for Labor Day weekend. The fans didn't all stay long. It cleared out pretty good after halftime. Looking down, the north end zone was pretty cleared out. The east sideline was starting to clear. The student section had a pretty steady trickle out during the second half. But that doesn't really matter. The commitment to show up in the first place is pretty impressive. Purdue's got to reward them this year. You've got to take advantage of this. You can't take the fan support for granted because it's not always been there. I'm old enough to remember season openers and games in general where Ross-Ade was pretty thin, where the student section was a ghost town. I remember all of this, and Purdue's got to find a way to keep that momentum from the fan base going. You got a tough schedule, but you got to just find a way to reward these fans. One thought I've had from week 1 here, there are some very mediocre teams in the Big Ten, and with an 18-team league, it almost doesn't matter as much because you hardly play anyone. You play half the league. So, half these teams, it doesn't matter. But Michigan State limped through against Florida Atlantic. 16-10, woof. Minnesota looked terrible against North Carolina. That was a really rough watch. I do not feel good about the direction of Minnesota. That program does not seem like it's headed in the right direction. That's been a pretty steady decline since 2019 when Minnesota won 11 games. Rutgers against Howard, I didn't think looked great. We'll see. Rutgers has a cake schedule this year. UCLA looked horrendous on the island against Hawaii. Needed a last-minute field goal to win that thing. It took a good fourth quarter for Wisconsin to get past Western Michigan. I'm not crazy on Tyler Van Dyke. That's going to be an interesting one. Keep an eye on Wisconsin because they went all in on trying to compete at a higher level when Wisconsin fired Paul Chryst in early October of 2022. Went all season, passed up on Jim Leonard, who did a great job as the interim, to go hire Luke Fickell. Last season did not go very well. We'll see what they do this year. Keep an eye on that one. Northwestern got past Miami, Ohio, and that was only a 2.5-point spread. So Northwestern did cover the spread, but I mean, it was 13-6, I think. 13-6. I'm not too impressed with Northwestern. I think Michigan is notably worse than they were last season. The difference between a lot of the teams in this league is going to be really thin. You have your top tier teams, and I'm not ready to write Oregon off after an underwhelming performance. Penn State looked great. Ohio State is loaded. You have those top tier teams, but the middle to bottom of this league is going to be pretty compact most of the time. And as you look at Purdue this year, you compare them to Michigan State, you compare them to Northwestern and Illinois and some of these teams in the middle, Indiana. Having Hudson Card could be a pretty big plus for Purdue. Maybe more of one than I had realized, and maybe more than a lot of others had realized coming into this season, because the quarterback play in this league is not great at all. It's a bye week now for Purdue, a really weird scheduling dynamic. We've talked about this before. There's nothing Purdue could have done. Purdue actually, had it not played around with the schedule and paid Indiana State to shift things around, Purdue would have had a week 1 bye. You don't want that at all. So Purdue was able to get a game in. Now it has a week 2 bye with Notre Dame on deck. Ryan Walters mapped out the plan in the post-game presser in terms of practices. Your top priority, get those 3 starters back on the field. Get your best 22 out there. You're going to need all hands on deck. We did see, one thing to note, Purdue did not attempt a field goal. Ryan Walters indicated that it would have been Spencer Porath had a field goal opportunity presented itself. I thought the return game looked all right. Dylan Thieneman returning punts had a couple of nice returns. Elijah Jackson returned a kickoff nicely, the only Indiana State kickoff of the day. So I think you feel good about where you're at. This, through one game, you've seen a lot of what you wanted to see, and that's a good thing. The jump in competition is immense. We got plenty of time to preview Notre Dame. That's a real challenge. Notre Dame is very good. Notre Dame got a really nice win against Texas A&M on Saturday night. By no means did I love what I saw from Texas A&M. Notre Dame has a real salty defense. Notre Dame has a good run game, an improved pass game. It's every bit the part of a top 10 team, which Notre Dame generally is. Over the last decade or so, Notre Dame's a legit top 10, top 15 team every year. That is a wonderful opportunity for Purdue. That's going to be a rockin' environment in West Lafayette. You certainly will have your fair share of blue and gold in the stands, but that's a big opportunity. That's a really big opportunity. You've got to come out and compete well. Talk about it a lot more in detail coming up, but as Purdue looks ahead, this is a really big opportunity for Ryan Walters and his program coming up on Saturday the 14th. But that's all I have from Purdue's season opening win. Thank you all for spending your time with me. I'm planning to come back later this week. I don't really know what I'm going to talk about yet, but we're going to talk about something Purdue football related. Maybe we'll look around the Big Ten some more. Obviously, next week, midweek, we'll preview Notre Dame. So start sending over questions about Purdue, about the Fighting Irish. Notre Dame does have a game against Northern Illinois on Saturday. I don't expect there to be much from that. Notre Dame should cruise there, but send over questions. Let me know what you want me to talk about later this week at Boilers Beyond, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. I'll talk to you then. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Labor Day weekend.